The frost clung to the cold metal of New Geneva Station, as if the whole place was shivering. The corridors were nearly empty, the artificial lights still dim, and the recycled air smelled faintly of iron and ice. James Torres liked mornings like this. He liked the quiet before the noise of workers and machines filled the station. With his steaming cup of coffee in one hand and a small bag of tools in the other, he stepped out of his apartment. He was thinking only of his shift at the terraforming depot. But then he stopped. Something small was curled against his doorway. At first, James thought it was just a bundle of cloth left behind. But then it moved. He set his coffee down, heart beating faster. When his eyes adjusted to the shadow, he realized it was a girl, barely more than a teenager. She wasn't human. Her body shook with cold. Her thin arms hugged her knees tightly. Ears, furred and sharp, twitched at the top of her head. A long tail was wrapped around her bare legs, as if she were trying to shield herself from the freezing air. Her auburn hair was messy, knotted with ice, and her skin carried faint striped patterns. James recognized them at once. She was Ferris. The Ferris were a feline species once feared across the stars. They had ruled 3 systems before humans came. Then the war happened, and the Ferris lost everything. Many humans looked at them with hatred. Some saw them as enemies. Others treated them like trophies. James had served during the war. He knew what both sides had done. And now, one of them was lying helpless at his door. He crouched down slowly, careful not to scare her. "Hey," he whispered softly. His voice sounded strange in the empty corridor. "Are you okay?" Her golden eyes snapped open, pupils narrowing into sharp slits. She hissed, low and weak, pressing herself against the cold door. She was ready to fight or flee, but she did not run. James realized why. She had nowhere to go. Without thinking twice, he pulled off his thermal jacket and draped it gently over her shoulders. She flinched, confused at the warmth, then clutched it tight. Her lips parted, and a sound came out, clicks, soft growls, but the tiny translator chip in James's ear turned it into broken standard. "My name." "Elsa," she whispered, teeth chattering. "Please, I have nowhere." The word struck deep inside James. He had heard desperate voices before, soldiers, refugees, children in ruins. But this was different. She was not an enemy. She was just a girl, alone, starving, and cold. James spoke gently. "I'm James. Come on, let's get you inside." When he helped her up, he was shocked at how light she was, like she hadn't eaten in days. Inside, his apartment was nothing special, a one-room space with a fold-out bed and a small kitchen unit. But compared to the corridor, it was safe, warm, alive. Elsa sat stiffly on the couch, still clutching his jacket, her golden eyes never leaving him. She looked like a cornered animal, ready to run the moment she felt danger. James set the food dispenser to make soup and opened a pack of protein bars. "How long since you ate?" he asked. Her voice was faint. 3 days. He handed her the bar. She took it, sniffed it once, then ate quickly, as if afraid it would vanish. The soup came next. She held the spoon with shaking hands, but with careful dignity, as if refusing to lose her manners even in hunger. James noticed, and he respected it. When she finished, he asked carefully, "What happened to you?" Her ears flattened against her skull. She looked down. "My family, passengers on a transport ship. Pirates came. I hid in an escape pod. I escaped, but..." She gestured at her thin body, her bare skin. Everything gone. James's chest tightened. He had heard of such stories many times. Refugee ships were easy prey for raiders in the outer systems. Most survivors never even reached stations like this. "And the station authorities?" he asked. "They processed me yesterday," she said bitterly. "No credits. No sponsors. No skills they wanted. They gave me 24 hours. Find work or go to labor camp." James leaned back, silent for a moment. The law was cruel. The papers made it look fair, but in truth, most refugees ended up in camps, factories, or worse. He looked at her again, at the way she held herself despite her exhaustion. Even broken, she had pride. He finally said, "I might have an idea." Her ears twitched. Hope flickered in her golden eyes. "The depot where I work," James continued, "they need translators. Not many humans speak your language. If you want, I can recommend you." She blinked, surprised. "You would help me? After the war?" James met her eyes. "Yeah, I was there. But that doesn't make this right." For the first time, Elsa lowered her guard. She pulled his jacket closer and whispered, "Thank you." James didn't answer. But deep inside, he knew this morning had changed everything. For her, and maybe for him too. The station light shifted slowly, simulating a new morning. James woke early, wondering if he had imagined the events of yesterday. But when he looked toward his couch, he saw her curled under the blanket. Elsa, the feline girl he had found with nothing on his doorstep. She was real, and she was still there. For a moment he studied her quietly. In sleep, her sharp eyes were closed, her breathing even. She looked younger, almost like a child, her tail resting lazily over the edge of the couch. James realized something then. He had taken responsibility for her, whether he had planned it or not. When she woke, Elsa's ears flicked nervously as though she expected to be thrown out. But James greeted her with calm words. "You're safe here. I'll take you to the depot today. They need translators. You will have a chance." Her golden eyes widened slightly, and for the first time, she allowed herself to believe him. The depot was crowded when they arrived, filled with engineers, miners, and mechanics. The air carried the strong scent of oil and iron. Humans bustled everywhere, tired faces focused on machines that kept the station alive. When James introduced Elsa to his supervisor, Martinez, the man frowned. "A Ferris." Martinez said bluntly, "James, we can't hire strays off the street." Elsa's ears flattened, her tail curling around her legs. James felt angerized but kept his voice steady. "She's fluent in 6 dialects. She speaks standard. She knows more about her people's culture than any computer translator. Give her one test." Martinez hesitated, then sighed. "Fine, one test." They placed her in front of a console. On the screen, recordings played of Ferris workers from a colony negotiating resource terms. Most humans couldn't make sense of the rolling growls and layered clicks. Elsa's fingers moved quickly, typing translations. Her voice spoke softly in standard, carrying not just word but meaning, context, and tone. After 5 minutes, Martinez raised his eyebrows. "She's good," he admitted. "Better than the machines." Elsa lowered her eyes, whispering, "Thank you." But James saw her hands trembling under the table. He knew this was more than a test. This was survival. She was given a temporary position. It wasn't much, but it was real work, and it meant she wouldn't be shipped to a camp. James walked her back afterward, proud of her success. "You did well," he said. Elsa's tail flicked. "They looked at me like I was nothing, like I was only useful for one thing." James nodded. "That may be true now, but you showed them more than they expected. That matters." Over the following weeks, Elsa adjusted slowly. At the depot, many humans treated her with suspicion, whispering when she passed. Some muttered about the war, about how many soldiers had died fighting her people. Others avoided her completely, as though she were dangerous. But she did not give up. She worked with steady focus, translating not only language but ideas. Human engineers who had struggled to understand Ferris' environmental techniques suddenly began to see new possibilities. One evening, after a long day, Elsa sat at James's small kitchen table, eating the simple meal he had prepared. She was quiet, her golden eyes distant. "You're thinking about something," James said. She looked at him carefully. "In my world, sharing food is sacred. It means trust. Hey, I sit in the home of a human soldier." "Why?" James leaned back, meeting her gaze. "Because I don't see you as an enemy. I see you as a person who needed help." Her ears tilted forward, curious, almost soft. "Not many think that way." "Maybe more should," he answered. The days turned into months. Slowly, Elsa began to change. The frightened girl who had clutched his jacket on that first night now walked into meetings with confidence. She began correcting engineers when they misunderstood cultural concepts. She explained how certain words carried honor or insult depending on tone. She showed patience, even when met with distrust. James noticed the amazement in people's eyes. At first, they resisted her presence. Now, they leaned forward, listening. Elsa was becoming more than just a translator. She was a bridge. One night, she sat beside James in the small apartment. The station lights dimmed, imitating nightfall. She looked at him and said softly, "You gave me a chance. You didn't have to. Do you know what that means to me?" James smiled faintly. "It means you proved me right." Elsa's tail swayed slowly, a quiet sign of contentment. For the first time since he had found her on his doorstep, she seemed at peace. James realized then that this story wasn't just about survival. It was about change, about trust born between two former enemies. And it amazed him how something so simple, opening a door one morning, could grow into something that might one day change entire worlds. The hum of the station never slept. Engines groaned deep in the metal walls, and the air recycling vents whispered like restless ghosts. But inside the depot, something new was happening. For months, the engineers had struggled with the terraforming projects on the Kepler colonies. The machines worked, but the environment resisted. Every meeting ended the same: humans frustrated, data useless, deadlines broken. Then Ilsa walked in. She was no longer the frightened girl huddled on James's couch. She stood taller now, her golden eyes steady, her fur-tipped ears alert. Though many still looked at her with suspicion, they could not deny her skill. James had seen her transformation with his own eyes, and it amazed him. She had found strength where others had expected only weakness. That morning, the depot gathered for another attempt at solving the Kepler issue. Engineers argued over soil balances, air composition, and failed atmospheric tests. The room felt heavy, hopeless. Then Martinez, the supervisor, nodded to Elsa. "Go ahead," he said, though his tone carried doubt. Elsa stepped forward. She placed a holo map of Kepler on the table. Her claws tapped against the glowing surface as she spoke. "You treat the planet like it is broken. You try to bend it into your shape. But Kepler is alive. It resists because you do not listen." Murmurs filled the room. Some scoffed, others frowned. James crossed his arms, watching. He had seen this before, humans unwilling to listen to someone they didn't trust. But Elsa pressed on, voice calm yet sharp. "In my people's tradition, we do not force the soil. We guide it. You pump machines into the ground, but you kill the balance. Look here." She zoomed in on the holo map, showing regions of stubborn plant growth. "Kepler has its own way of breathing. You must work with it, not against it." A silence followed. For the first time, the engineers leaned closer. She continued, explaining how Farah's bioremediation techniques could adapt to human machines. She drew comparisons, made simple sketches, even mimicked the sounds of Kepler wind to show how they shifted across terrain. By the end, the room was quiet, not with rejection, but with thought. Martinez rubbed his chin. "Could that actually work?" "Yes," Ilsa said firmly, "if you allow me to test it." James caught the flicker in her eyes. She was not just asking for permission. She was daring them to believe. 2 weeks later, the depot tried her method. Instead of forcing their machines into the soil, they adapted them with Farah's techniques. Small adjustments, careful balance, listening to the land rather than crushing it. The result shocked everyone. Growth that had stalled for years finally began. The air measurements shifted. Plants survived longer. The planet, once silent, began to respond. The report spread quickly. Other depots sent requests for Ilsa's notes. Some who had once whispered against her now sought her advice. James watched from the side as she stood among humans, her voice strong, her presence undeniable. The girl who had once begged for shelter now carried the respect of people who had doubted her existence. One evening, after the success was confirmed, James and Ilsa sat in the apartment they now shared. She cooked a Ferris dish, the scent filling the room with spices and warmth. James watched her move with practiced grace, amazed at the change. "You did it," he said finally. Elsa tilted her head, ears twitching. "We did it. You brought me here. You gave me a chance." James shook his head. No, Elsa, you prove yourself. You amaze them, even me. Her golden eyes softened, and for a moment she seemed both proud and fragile. Back on my world, to be respected was everything. To lose it, it was death. But now, she looked around the small apartment, her tail curling gently. Now I have it again. A new kind. James raised his glass to her. To new respect. She touched her cup to his, smiling faintly. And to humans who open doors. The station lights dimmed outside, signaling night, but inside, the glow of something greater burned. Elsa was no longer a stray refugee. She was a voice, a bridge, a future. And James realized with her that the decision he had made on that frozen morning, one simple act of kindness, had already begun to reshape not just a life, but perhaps the destiny of two peoples. The announcement spread across the station like wildfire. The council had recognized a breakthrough on Kepler, and the one they credited most was not a scientist, not a decorated human officer, but a young Ferris refugee who had once arrived with nothing. Elsa's name echoed in the corridors, whispered with curiosity and surprise. Some still doubted her, but many now looked at her with new respect. James watched it all with quiet pride. He remembered the girl trembling on his doorstep, clutching his jacket to survive the freezing night. Now she walked with her head high, tail swaying in quiet confidence, her golden eyes clear and sharp. The council called her to a meeting in the administrative sector. It was a kind of room James had never entered, a place where officials decided the future of entire colonies. When Elsa stood before them, she wore simple clothes, nothing fancy, but she carried herself with dignity. One counselor spoke bluntly, "You are Ferris. Why should humanity trust you?" Elsa did not flinch. "Because I have no reason to destroy. I lost everything already. What I have now, I built with you. I work with humans every day. We succeed when we trust. If you want to shape new worlds, then let them be worlds we share, not worlds we steal." The chamber fell silent. Her words were simple, but they cut through the air like truth that could not be ignored. Even the skeptical counselors leaned back, thoughtful. In the end, they offered her a position, head of intercultural communication for the expansion projects. It was more than a job. It was a seat at the table, a chance to guide the fragile balance between two peoples who had once been at war. That evening, Elsa returned to the apartment. James was waiting, and when she stepped inside, he saw something different in her. She no longer looked like someone searching for a place. She had found it. "They gave me the role," she said softly, almost as if she could hardly believe it herself. "I will help guide the colonies. They trust me." James smiled, pride swelling in his chest. "Of course they do. You earned it." She sat across from him, folding her hands neatly. For a moment, the confidence slipped, and he saw the same girl he had once found at his door. Her voice trembled, though her eyes shone bright. "James, you gave me more than shelter. You gave me a future. Without you, I would be nothing. I want you to know that." He shook his head gently. "No, Elsa, you were never nothing. You just needed someone to see it. You saved your own future. I just opened the door." Her tail swayed slowly, her version of a smile. "Where I come from, opening a door to a stranger is a sacred act. It is a beginning of family." The word stayed with James long into the night. He had never thought of himself as heroic. He was just a tired worker who had once been a soldier. But as he looked at Elsa, he realized that true heroism was not always in battles fought or medals earned. Sometimes it was in small choices, choosing compassion when others chose convenience. Weeks later, as Elsa began her work with the Council, she grew into a symbol not just for her people but for humanity as well. She showed that even enemies could build bridges, that the scars of war could heal when kindness was allowed to grow. Colonies that had resisted cooperation now opened their doors, following her example. Projects that had stalled for decades began to thrive. James often stood at the edge of meetings, unnoticed, watching her speak. Each time he felt the same amazement. The girl who had once been alone, hungry, and unwanted now stood as a leader who gave hope to many. One night, when the station lights dimmed to their artificial dusk, Elsa returned home, tired but content. She sat beside James, resting her head against his shoulder. "You once told me I saved myself," she whispered. "But still, I want you to know, you saved something bigger. You reminded humanity what it means to see potential instead of problems." James listened, his heart quiet and full. Outside, the stars drifted past in endless silence. But inside, he felt a truth burning bright. He had discovered her that morning with nothing, no clothes, no future, on his doorstep. Yet what she had become was everything. And in that moment, James understood. The greatest victories were not won in war, but in the simple act of choosing to care.